And then the tree is super embedded within the silhouette of that head because our whole body is going to be vibrationally demonstrated through your voice. And I'll go through that a little bit more because we will support the voice, the ear, and the brain. The tool that I now use is called the Diagnostic Evaluation for Therapy Protocol. It will tell me the parts of the tree and what connections are out of balance with the voice, the ear, and the brain, as well as the cell's response to sound. And then once I have that test information, I determine a protocol of appropriate therapies. I will also tell you if you don't need them, and I also will refer you to others when I see that issue is very important, because all I'm going to do is work on repatterning the body. The other specialists come in afterwards. So if I'm, by the way, your ear is your only sensory system fully functioning in utero, and the way I look at the ear is a global sensory processor, no longer a hearing mechanism. And so if we're looking at it that way, in utero, your ear is fully functioning by 4.5 months. The nervous system is established by 7 months. And so I start with pregnant moms. We have a lovely pregnant mothers program to make sure that ear is well established and supporting sensory information early on. But now what I do is I can detect where and how sound has affected the body and look, more importantly, as how to make change for that. The lovely thing about what I do is the test battery I still have to do in person. I'm working on getting it to a format that will be able to eventually train others to do it. But right now I just travel around the country administering the test battery, and then the therapies for the most part can be administered in the comfort of your home with your own therapist, or there are centers who do those types of therapies in your area. You could look for those as well, but at least you have the idea and knowledge of what is necessary. So let's take a look at sound. Sound affects you, yes, through your ears. You know that part. But your skin also responds to sound. Your bones respond to sound. Your touch responds to sound, and your cells. And sound affects you physically, emotionally, and the way you are going to tune in and respond to the world around you. We also know that you have to hear sound correctly to process what's being said. And it doesn't mean that if you're deaf and hard of hearing that you can't respond to sound, because you can through those other modalities. So let's take a look now at both positive and negative responses to sound. There is a huge industry in the music field on CDs selling to get you to buy CDs for relaxing, motivation, calming, whatever it is that you might need. Those CDs are specifically engineered to support that. That's positive. Negatively, we see people who want to be isolated when there's too much sound. We see having a lack of attention and focus. Hypersensitivity to all sensory stimulation, not just sound. Poor social skills, weak motor and vestibular skills, reading skills, auditory processing skills. Those are all negative types of responses from sound. Now, I've been in this field. I'm an audiologist by profession, specialized in education and rehabilitation. My early work was on middle ear infections and the educational and the foundational functional responses to middle ear infections, and it's really why I went into what I'm doing now. Because in 1992, I got trained in my first sound-based therapy. I came away saying, wow, you can't tell me what's going on or why it works. And that wasn't good enough for me, so I started doing my own in-house research and soon found that I was making change physiologically, and began to be trained in more and more of them, and now I'm trained in 20 of them. But when I began to put this slide together in particular, I took this negative from my audiology textbooks for oral rehab, which is what one of my specialties was before, and soon saw that when we look at sound and vibration, it's the same kind of responsiveness. So the two go hand in hand. And then, because I worked so much with special needs children, let's take a look at the types of things that I see from them. We see them covering their ears. I have identified 4 different types of hypersensitivities to sound, and it's really important to identify which, if not all of them, are present, so you know the best way to address and which therapy is going to be most supportive for change. We see them turning the TV volume up. I had a mom this morning who said the same thing to me. Well, I don't know how they can be sensitive to sound. They sit there with that TV blaring. What happens when the TV is blaring is they want to feel connected to the television in front of them. And very often by being connected to the television in front of them, if the volume was low, they would also hear what someone was saying 3 rooms away. They would see things going on around them, people talking. They wouldn't be able to tune in here. So while it may not be really enjoyable sound-wise, they want to see the visual. So they're going to connect that way. So it's telling me something automatically when they say they need the television up loud. We see fears of sound. It is the number one thing that is the most difficult for me to eventually get rid of. I do if we stay with it long enough because the fear is set up here. So again, I'm the voice of your brain. The brain is the one that's going to undo that. Tuning out the world. Or you can also, in some cases, call that hypo-responsive to sound. And every single person I have ever seen who tunes out the world is hypersensitive to sound by one of those 4. And so it's really important to identify which one is present so you know what way to begin addressing the problem. We see them disliking background noise. It's either confusing, they can't hear all the pieces, they don't know what it's going to be, so they just can't stand it. We see them reacting sometimes and not others. That's confusing to parents because how do you know what way to go if your child seems to be okay in this situation and not this one? So how can it be his hearing or his response to sound? And we see in many case histories that at sometimes somebody thought maybe the child was deaf and they had their hearing tested early on. We see less and less of that, which is great on my part, moving forward because there's so much in the way of early identification. So there are 3 key points behind my model. First, there are 5 laws that support the connection between the voice, the ear, and the brain. And to keep it short for today, I'm just going to summarize what they are. Simply said, the voice produces what the ear hears. Think about that. Your voice produces what the ear hears. Oh, wow, what is my child doing? Well, my child has choppy speech, has speech distortion, speaks in a quiet voice. There's many different distortions in your vocal patterns. And the ear emits the same stressed frequencies as the voice. That's my work. That's the Davis addendum to the Tomatis effect, and it's where I'm able to build on what I'm putting together for the future. And we also know if one is modified, the other is going to change. And eventually the brain then supports the correcting response to the body. We also know that every cell in your body emits and takes in a sound. And if you look at those cells, picture every cell as its own musical instrument playing its own sound, you, in effect, are your own signature symphony of sound because you've got all these instruments being played all the time, but they're not always in tune. So my job is to tune them up. So for me, it's not just the incoming sound that the person is trying to use. It is both the reception and the expression of sound that keeps us whole. So this body is the orchestra of many different frequencies, and I have to try to tune people up. And the way I do it is I use your voice. Your voice is going to reflect what your ear and your brain receive and perceive. The third part of the Davis model is that I do look at your ear as your global sensory processor. To me, it's no longer just a hearing mechanism. Sound is going to be processed through your bone structure, cell response, nervous system, circulatory system. It is a whole body response.